and environmental due diligence in the textile and garment supply chain in Asia. With the introduction of the German Supply Chain Act, which came into effect on the 1st of January, the GIZ, in cooperation with our partners in different countries, the Bangladesh Garment Manufacturers and Exporters Association, and the Bangladesh Knitwear Manufacturers and Exporters Association, the EuroCham in Cambodia, and the Vietnam Chamber of Commerce and Industry. We have established the responsible business hubs and help desk, which serve as support structures for manufacturers and building local capacity on the human rights and environmental due diligence through this local help desk. The session today is in 4 parts, and it will highlight the needs and benefits of responsible business help desk for manufacturers. The participants also hear about the HREDD legislation and how does this affect the supply chains. The session also highlights the needs and benefits of the responsible business help desk for manufacturer. And afterwards, we will enjoy a conversation with our local partners who have been hosting the local responsible business help desk in their respective countries to learn about the country's specific insights on fulfilling the due diligence requirements in the textile and garment supply chain in Asia. And then we will move forward to the Q&A session so that we can hear from all of you joining us today to talk about the Due Diligence Act impact on the supply chain and how the local support structure play an important role in promoting the HREDD in the Asian textile and garment supply chain. And with this, I would now turn the floor over to our first speaker, Eike Pedersen. Ms. Eike Pedersen is currently working as Senior Project Manager for the Initiative for Global Solidarity, GIZ. In her previous role, he worked as an advisor to the German government on the topic of human rights due diligence, focusing on the textile supply chain. She also managed the country activities of the regional project, the GIZ Fabric in Myanmar and Vietnam, where she worked with the government stakeholders, civil society, local industries, and global fashion brands to foster collaboration for a variety of sustainability projects. So Eike, it would be great if you could share a snapshot of the context of the why we should aim for an enhanced local capacity on human rights and environmental due diligence, and how the global network of the RDH was initiated, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chang. Thank you very much for the kind introduction. Can I just confirm you can hear me? Yeah, okay. Okay, thank you very much. It's my great pleasure to being here today and to setting the scene for a very exciting conversation among our esteemed partners and hosts of our 3 responsible business hubs, the RBHs from Asia. And I think today is also quite significant as it is the first time that we have the host of 3 of our 4 RBHs in one room. So maybe we could even call that the formal launch of the RBH network. So let me start with a very brief background on why we as Initiative for Global Solidarity are supporting the establishment of the hubs and the network of RBH. The Initiative for Global Solidarity was set up by the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development as a direct support measure to accompany the implementation of the German Supply Chain Act and more broadly due diligence across global supply chains. And we do that by harmonizing and scaling proven approaches, by supporting models of shared responsibility among buying and supplying companies, and by building local capacities for due diligence implementation, including on data and transparency. So the approach of the Responsible Business Hub network actually covers all the project objectives and is therefore at the core of the Initiative for Global Solidarity. And I brought 3 slides with me, so Leah, could you please put them up? Thank you. So what's the rationale and the context for the RBH setup? If you could go to the first slide, please. So as all of us sitting here in the room today know, an increasing number of countries have introduced mandatory HREDD. We have really seen a proliferation of the approach over the last years. And as a consequence of that, we see that global companies are stepping up their game. They're adapting their strategies to the due diligence approach, and they're passing on these requirements to their local suppliers. However, at the heart of the due diligence logic is that understanding that effective implementation is depending on the cooperation and the contribution of all supply chain actors and partners. It is a shared responsibility. And the reality, nevertheless, is that the relationship between buying and supplying companies remain unequal, and that producers in production countries are still quite new to this global concept and may not have an understanding what is the difference to the previous compliance perspective. They lack the awareness, know-how on HREDD, on appropriate risk management systems, on systematic data collection, on monitoring, on reporting. From our understanding, building such local capacities is a precondition to foster improved cooperation between global buying companies and local suppliers, and to ultimately thereby drive holistic due diligence implementation. So next slide, please. So what does that mean? Thank you. So what does that mean in practice? With the responsible business hubs, the RBHs, we are building a network of support on human rights and environmental due diligence in partner countries of global supply chains. In these countries, in a number of countries, we are partnering with local business associations and chambers that have set their strategic priority to prepare their members for this new dynamic and responsible business conduct, and also want to position themselves as attractive, safe, and reliable production locations. So we are establishing these help desks that offer tailor-made information, advisory services, and support awareness raising and networking around due diligence for local producers, associations, service providers, and other relevant stakeholders. And by building the capacity of local business organizations to being able to providing the services and to fostering dialogue among stakeholders, we seek to create a replicable model that can also be scaled to other partner countries, ultimately leading to a more sustainable and responsible global supply chain. As you can see in the next slide, we have already opened a number of RBHs, launched a number of RBHs, or are in the process of launching them, namely in Serbia, Bangladesh, Cambodia, and Vietnam. But we are also looking into expanding the network further and have taken up the conversations with additional partner countries. Key cooperation partners of the network are also the German help desk for business and human rights. That is a help desk that is located in Germany and advises German companies on the due diligence approach, and of course also now on the implementation of the German Supply Chain Act. So we are bringing the global help desk also together with the local help desk and contributing here to learning and a dialogue among these help desks, and these are part of the wider network. We also partner with the German AHKs in many geographies, the German Chambers of Industry and Commerce abroad, that are also providing services to especially German companies that are producing or that are located in the producing countries. So we are fostering here also the dialogue and complementing the service offered to the HKs, what they are supporting to providing to German companies, and we are working with the local stakeholders. And as you can also see here on the slide, you see our host organizations, the VCCI, the EuroCham, BGMEA, BKMEA, and the Chamber of Commerce and Industry in Serbia. So to sum up, we are confident that the RBH's network will constitute a gateway for local businesses that want to step up their sustainability performance and comply with provisions deriving from diligence legislation. And through its various services, the RBH network helps businesses and other stakeholders to navigate this changing landscape and to adopt a more responsible approach to their operations. And moreover, the standardized approach and the replication potential will ensure that more and more local businesses can benefit from the tailored support on responsible business conduct, ultimately benefiting local industries' competitiveness and working conditions. And yeah, to end this small input, a brief shout out. We are expanding the network, and we are also here and available to join forces with other partners that have an interest in supporting additional business organizations to setting up RBHs and supporting local industries. So you can find my contact details here, and if you have an interest in discussing that further, don't hesitate to reach out. And with that, I hand back to Chang.
Thank you, Heike. Thank you very much for providing us the background and context of how the global network of responsible business hubs has been set up and launched in Asia already. And it's very good to learn that the network is expanding further in the coming time and then can further support the Supply Chain Act implementation in the country. Now I'd like to turn to Janos German, who is the founder and managing director of the Part of the Solution. Part of the Solution is focused on helping companies design and implement tailored.
You're muted, Chang.
Sorry. Sorry, I was muted. So I just extended the thank you for Heike to providing us the background and the context of the global network of responsible business hub, and also good to learn that the network is extending in the coming time, so that we have the opportunity to further support the implementation of the Supply Chain Act in the countries. And now I would like to turn to Janos German, who is founder and managing director of the Part of the Solution. Part of the Solution is focused on helping companies design and implement tailored sustainability programs in their value chain. Mr. Janos worked with textile supply chains in Asia for 7 years, and in addition, he helped set up multi-company partnerships, including on cobalt, rice, and supply chain decarbonization. And prior to that, he also led the GIZ private sector clients team. So he will share with us the view on what requirements coming up with the due diligence law and how the HREDD legislation changed the supply chain in Asia. Please, Janos, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much indeed. And I hope that there are slides coming up. Super, here they are. So it's great to speak to all of you. I hope you can hear me. Just a quick sign because we had technical issues before.
Yes, we do.
Super, that's good news. So indeed, I was asked to sort of take out or sort of find the silver bullet on and sort of the outlook as to how HREDD legislation or will change supply chains in Asia. And if we just skip to the next slide, and I think we can actually sort of already sort of pop it up. My sort of more conservative take, I guess, is that the immediate result will be more compliance, and I think that's no surprising, because of course that's the requirement that companies have, and so the companies that we work with, the large textile manufacturers, but also companies from other industries, that's really the focus that they set, and I'll come to that in a second. But I also have a slightly more positive outlook, and that's that because compliance in the past has shown its limitations, I would argue, that we'll also see sort of changes in the way that capacity development works. And I think this combination together, to me, provides a rather positive outlook that we need the element of compliance, but we also need like an innovative approach to capacity development. And so to explain why I think that's the case, we'll go to the next slide. I thought about whether I could show the due diligence circle to a due diligence audience, but I still do it, and not so much to explain it to you, but rather to see where to explain why I think companies are focusing on this first part. The discussions that we are having, and I guess many of our sort of consulting peers with companies, are basically looking at the element number 4 of the management systems and the number 1, the risk analysis, right? So I think that's the most part where we see that companies are most preoccupied with at the moment. So it's coming really from a moment of many companies who started their due diligence journey maybe even a few years ago, they now review this. That includes sort of textile companies, that includes electronics companies, even the big automotive companies. Everyone really now is in the process of making sure that they meet the compliance standards set by the German law, especially, and I guess the upcoming European laws and other laws that are either in practice or in effect already or coming into effect. And so it's really this element of ring fencing for the companies, making sure that they don't have any open holes or sort of open areas where they could be attacked. And so what this leads to, that's the discussions that we see happening at the moment, is that these, hang on, stick with me for a second. What this leads to is that these companies will then sort of turn to their suppliers and their supply chain really to see how can they sort of forward this these requirements. And so I think that's really the element of compliance that we see at the moment happening. And I think that in and of itself, I would argue is fairly problematic, because in the past, and I worked in Bangladesh up and down, this hasn't always proved to be very effective, right? I mean, I think we still have a systemic problem of corruption in the auditing industry, and so just relying on these standards hasn't sort of really led to much improvement. And so, as Eike mentioned earlier, I think there is a need for a slightly different approach, even though compliance as well will need to enhance. But the focus indeed is then, and that's on the next slide, the focus on capacity development. And so if we say that compliance in and of itself is a valuable tool, but only one tool, then I think the other part of the equation needs to be capacity development, supporting suppliers and supply chains in developing. Yet, again, I think there are some challenges, right? And so, I mean, I worked with GIZ, and I worked sort of on the consulting side. And when we look at what makes an effective program, I think effective programs for capacity building, first and foremost, means we need to strengthen the manufacturers to drive the process, right? So again, we come from an area where consultants would go to a factory and kind of do the work for them. And I think that's really not how things should be done, but it's really sort of the element of developing a manufacturer's capacity. Second, let's not duplicate what's already happening. I remember we worked with one factory in Bangladesh. They said, like, we have 15 different capacity building programs running at the same time. I think that got a bit better, but only a bit. And so I think that's still a massive problem of duplication. I mean, we of course remember the difference of, was it fire extinguishers between Accord and the lines and all of this. And so I think we moved on, but still I think there's more to do. And third, and I think that's really important, we need to strengthen local advisory capacities. At the moment, we still too often fly in expensive consultants from Europe or United States to Asia and basically explain how the world runs, when we have really a pool of talented people in these countries who can do this at a margin of the cost, really in the local language and with lots of expertise. And so I think there are effective programs out there, but the challenge that I see is that they're effective and often very limited in scope for that matter, so that we do a pilot with 10 suppliers here or 5 suppliers there, but that's really not addressing the challenge. On the other hand, and that's the second part of that slide, we have affordable programs that often focus on scalability through digital formats. We have these remote learning workshops, things like that. We often have platforms that are very attractive, of course, for brands, because they provide comparability, especially in the decarbonization field right now. And so that, of course, is attractive in the first part. And then again, often provided by Western consultancies in like lock-in business models, where basically you say you use my platform, and then sort of the supplier has to fill in 3 or 4 platforms. We see that happening right now as well. And the challenge that I see with many of the affordable programs is that they're very ineffective, right? So I'm not sure how your learning patterns happen, but sort of my personal self-learning approaches with online universities, etc., have been fairly limited. So I think it's actually something very similar that we can expect from manufacturers. I think it won't, like a one-off online workshop will not really change it. And so if we move to the next slide, please. I would argue that we need a new approach to capacity development, and that comprises a number of different points. And first and foremost, on the left side, we have the manufacturers. And so I think they're really key and central, right? So, I mean, just in the way that if I go to H&M, for example, I don't tell H&M how they should do their decarbonization. I think we should have a similar mindset to suppliers as well, right? So I think many of suppliers are multi-million dollar or euro companies, and so I think we should treat them at that level as well. So basically providing the support that they need, but also expecting sort of a certain level of independence. And so I think manufacturers are sort of the driving piece in this bit. And on the other hand, we have the service providers in these countries that are often capable at some point still sort of lack training on some of the newest elements. So for example, we did a research on service providers that are able to work with due diligence or science-based targets. And so even in countries like Serbia, but also Bangladesh, we see that many of them are really not sort of very experienced in these topics. So the support needs required. And then I think we have that big blue button in the middle, and that's the matchmaking element. And so for me, that's really most critical, and that's also where I see a huge potential for the responsible business hubs, right? We have the manufacturers on the one hand, and we have the service providers on the other hand, and really sort of making sure that there is a perfect match between them, so that the manufacturer finds the service provider that really addresses their needs specifically at a price that they can afford. I think that's really the level that we need to get to. And that really, for me, is a perfect world of sort of how sustainability and capacity development can happen at scale. However, and I think that's an important element that I still want to turn to, is that sort of framework conditions that sort of is basically embedding all of this. And so I think here, especially governments, but also to an extent brands have to play a role. When we look at, for example, in Vietnam, if I'm not mistaken, but I think also in Bangladesh, if you want to reduce your carbon emissions, I mean, you can install solar, and then sort of you reduce, was it 5 to 10% of your energy consumption, but still there's like 90 to 95% remaining. And so how can you get this green? And so we need green power purchasing agreements, for example. But if there is no power purchasing agreement, or if there are no sort of green power contracts that you can buy, that's of course a problem. And so I think many of these elements are really required on this higher level, and that's something that I guess many of the manufacturers or the service providers can't fix on their own. And so we need governments and brands to really push sort of the bigger agenda. I think that's really something that I think is required. And then sort of I want to leave you with a thought on the next slide, and that's 5 criteria for supply chain capacity development that I think, or that we think, are important based on the projects that we implemented. And so that's, I think, first, as I mentioned sort of throughout the discussion, we really need to empower the producer, right? So it won't work without it. We can't do the work for them, but really the producer or the supplier needs to be in the driver's seat. I think that's ultimately critical. Second, and that goes really along with this, we also need to empower the responsibility. We discussed compliance in the beginning, and I think this is where this comes in, right? So it's sort of, it's trust, but also responsibility that really must go hand in hand. And then third, I think it's really critical that we use existing offers in everything that we do, that we use local service providers, local expertise, local people that speak the language, that know the culture. Fourth, we need to be scalable to other countries and tiers. And so I'm very happy to see that Eike said that the responsible business hubs will expand to other countries, because I think there's lots of potential in there. And then 5, I think sort of all modern capacity development programs need to be simple for brands and for manufacturers, right? So the platform, sort of the decarbonization platform alone is not enough if it makes the life of the supplier harder. That's, I think, really a one-sided perspective that won't be enough. And so I saw that, for example, Janet from SLCP is in the call today, and I'm really, really happy, because I think that these are really the approaches that I think we need more of, right? So systems that are open, transparent, interoperable, right? So where basically we have a harmonized system of data that can apply to different brands, and that where basically then the different brands can enter into discussions with their suppliers on what to do. So I want to leave you with that thought. I think the immediate response to the due diligence laws in Europe are compliance, a greater focus on compliance for the next 1 and 2 years. But I think really what we see right now is a new form of development of capacity development that's happening, that's appearing, and I think that's really sort of making me optimistic that we'll see like a really renewed push. And for me and for the discussion that we're going to have right now, I think it's really critical that we see how we can best match the needs of the manufacturers and really sort of strengthen their responsibility and their sort of their ambition in not waiting for the brand to say something, but really sort of to be proactive, to go forward. And I think that it's really a crucial role and really a huge opportunity that we have with the responsible business hubs. So with that, thank you very much, and yeah, really look forward to the discussion now. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Janos, for sharing a brief guide of the legislation requirements and how that will change the supply chain. I think later we'll also hear the insight from our local host, and then to see how they see the local responsible business help us contribute to address these challenges and see the conversations going. I'd like to continue the session with the panel discussion. And I'd like to invite our speakers today. So we have today our partners from Bangladesh, Cambodia, and Vietnam joining us, and to share their specific country insights on fulfillment requirements from the ground. First, we have Ms. Barrister Sherwin, the director of the Bangladesh Garment Manufacturer and Exporters Association, BGMEA. She's also the director of the Envoy Group and an advocate of the Supreme Court of Bangladesh. She's a prominent lawyer in Bangladesh, specializing in corporate and banking laws, and she's very, very committed to supporting the responsible business help desk, or known as the due diligence unit in the BGMEA, to get prepared the garment factories to meet due diligence requirements. Next, we have also Mr. Fadli Shamin Ishan, the Vice President of the Bangladesh Knitwear Manufacturers and Exporters Association, BKMEA. Mr. Ishan is a dedicated board member and very passionate about the development of the ready-made garment sector in Bangladesh. He has been leading many development activities in their member factories and supporting the workers' well-being under his leadership. He's also supported the establishment of the RBH in BKMEA and committed to continuing in the future. Our next panelist is Ms. Sarah Monti, who is Senior Responsible Business Hub Coordinator from the EuroCham Cambodia. Ms. Sarah is an Italian and qualified lawyer with many years of experience in mergers and acquisitions, international and commercial laws, and corporate law at the law firms in different countries. And she's based in Cambodia since 2020 and assisting the Textile, Apparel, Footwear and Travel Goods Association in Cambodia in the procurement in front of the EU General Court about the Everything But Arms withdrawal. She's currently acting as Senior Responsible Business Hub Coordinator with specific expertise on sustainability and responsible business practice. And last but not least, we have Ms. Trần Thị Lan Anh, Secretary General of the Vietnam Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the VCCI. Ms. Lan Anh is also the Director General of the Bureau for Employers Activities of the VCCI, with extensive working experience on trade and business facilitation, especially in SME development. She's been managing various development cooperation projects, supporting the business community, and she works closely with tripartite partners on policy advocacy, as well as managing projects and programs on labor issues, from labor market, industrial relations, employment, as well as workplace compliance via labor inspection in Vietnam. So welcome all of the panelists. And Before I started, just a small note to all the participants that please leave your questions in the chat box along the discussion, so we will collect and address in the Q&A session later. First, I want to start with Mr. Ishan. We were aware of the German Supply Chain Act since a couple of years ago, and we had some time to prepare last year for the country implementation, including the establishment of the responsible business HREDD. We would be curious to learn on the motivation of the BKMEA in hosting the HREDD in Bangladesh, and why do you think it's important to the association? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. Very good morning and very good afternoon. Actually, it's my honor to talk about the Responsible Business Hub in the Asian textile industries, because as you know, the Asia is attracting increasing attention from the foreign companies as a manufacturing hub due to the number of factors, including the rise of wages in many other countries, and especially Bangladesh is growing a lot due to the COVID supply chain disruption and increase in shipping lead time and the cost. So the economic shift from the West to Asia refers to the important implication for the business and government and individual around the world. And in this concept, actually nowadays, the European due diligence guideline or German due diligence law is very important for us to comply all the international standard, because as the days are going on, Bangladesh economy is growing very fast, and we are targeting almost $50 billion to earn from the next year from the apparel sector. So it is not like before. So now we have to move a lot, and the responsible business practices or human rights and environmental due diligence law is coming up in many countries. So without comply with this, we cannot actually compete in the market in the future time. So that's why actually we consider that responsible business hub is very important to us, because this is a kind of new, especially the German due diligence law and the coming up the EU followed by EU due diligence guideline. These are quite new for us. It's not very common, the same as the before compliance. So that's why actually we have to give a quite detailed guideline to our industries, including the member factories and the supply chain also, because the big part of this guideline or law is the supply chain. So that's why actually we got motivated to establish RBH in our own association, and also the help desk, and to create a focal point.
Sorry, it seems that the connection.
Can't you hear me?
The connection is on and off.
No, we can hear you well.
Okay, so other people can hear me, right?
Yes. Please
Okay.
Continue.
Okay.
I can hear you very well.
Okay. Thank you. So that's why actually we are establishing a business hub and the focal point in each and every factories under the guideline of GIZ. So the people can be more aware and can be more comply with the due diligence law. And it is very important also for us, because without this we cannot be comply with the next level standard in the supply chain market of the apparel industries. As you know, Bangladesh is coming up with a vast of green industries, and out of the total LEED certified industries, almost 250 factories are in Bangladesh, and top 5 factories are also established in Bangladesh, the LEED certified environmental friendly industries. So in environmental way, we are a little bit ahead, but there is a lot way to go. So that's why actually we establish this guideline, so we can be comply and we can be aligned with the new all the rules and regulation of the European Union and the West. So that's actually my point for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yushan. So we learned that you see also the potential of the values and services that the IDA should contribute to help the factories in more compliance and also meeting the requirements of the Also, in Bangladesh, we have another responsible business hub desk hosted by another Bangladeshi partner, the Bangladesh Garment Manufacturer and Exporters Association, the BGMEA. With this, I'd like to invite Ms. Sherin. Would you please share some challenges that you will see regarding the due diligence requirements that the garment sector is facing in the country, and how we will see the help desk contribute to address or overcome these?
Thank you so much, Ike. Everyone can clearly hear? Is that okay? The volume and everything?
Yes.
Just give me a heads up. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for the question, and really esteemed panelists over here. I'm really glad to be a part. Before I really start, I would like to address two laws that we're currently working with, and which has this huge impact on this whole system of application of due diligence in our country and the whole RMG sector. So that's the German Supply Chain Due Diligence Act, and also the similar regulations and the regimes from the EU laws as well. So currently that this industry and I personally have been facing is mainly a query from our entire supply chain. You see, Bangladesh is a multidimensional sector where there are industries running all across, but only this RMG sector is like a web all across the world. So internationally based, we really have to cater to the requirements, laws, regimes, and needs on models of all our suppliers that we work with. So at one point, if I may piggyback to Mr. Janosh's PPT slides that he showed, we had queries about him addressing one of the RMG industries, and he saw that there were 50 business models or social safety net models that were running around, because we had different models that we needed to implement at that very time. What happens, and the biggest problem this industry is facing at the moment, is the duplication of the requirements that could have been much simpler had we had a uniform and a very signified set of rules or applications over there. Our industries are compliant. They are we have some of the best green industries in our country, and they're LEED certified. We are environmentally friendly. There are a lot of things going on at the same time, but with all the different business models that we have to adhere at the same time, the industry is often getting a little confused, if I may use the word over here. The reason being, we have multiple risk management systems required or referred to by different suppliers, or different, like GIZ or the German laws have one. The EU regimes have another. They are not very divergent, but they are not exactly the same. If we come to the risk management factor, there are associations which have different set of risk management, which might be slightly different from the others. The grievance mechanism might be similar, but not the same. So what we are facing is, because we are very recently getting up with the idea of RBH, we are finding it a little difficult to cope up with all the systems that we could have properly used if they were aligned and uniform. For my very part, I would like to point out 2 points from those PPT slides which were very crucial to our system of running at the moment. One was the duplication of these mechanisms. The other is strengthening or making use of our local service providers. And the third and the foremost is cost. You have to understand that whenever we are running a business, it is definitely at the very end of the day, we would want to run with the utmost idea of ensuring the safety, well-being of our workers, as well as a proper profitable mechanism too. But seeing the world, the way the inflation's happening and the dollar crisis, we are uncertain about the future, the dangling of orders from all these sectors, and the uncertain future that we are actually seeing at this moment, we are actually worried as to how much measure we can actually keep up to. At this very moment, the RBH has to play a very strong role in keeping the industry together in alignment with these due diligence laws. And that can only be done by certain steps that a uniform RBH can actually apply. Number one would be, as mentioned before too, scalable tiers. You see, not all apples in a basket are green or red. There are some shady apples too. There are small apples, there are big apples, there are ripe ones, there are unripe ones. So similarly, we have different sort of factories which are not really ready to adhere the same level of due diligence laws. So the RBH needs to scale it likewise so that everyone takes it like a cherry on top of the cake rather than a bone in the fish. It has to be presented to them as a benefit that they can adhere to in the future rather than a burden. Secondly, I would ask for an approach of help from all our brands and manufacturers. We need to hold hands over here. These are times which are trying times for this industry, and for our nation to stand by with a strong stand on due diligence, and with these RBHs working really strongly together, the brands need to have very compromising attitudes, and they really need to understand which factory or which types of factories can adhere to which laws, and they need to be a bit more lenient. And last but not the least, we would expect our existing mechanisms that are already in hand to be considered, and they must be taken on board so that the next regimes that the RBHs are actually involving on us or implementing must be in collaboration and complementing the ones that are already in use. I wouldn't be taking much of a time, but one last request I would probably put forward to on this platform. I don't know if everyone will echo with me or not, but a local help desk in any RBH. I don't know in the system that they, as BKMEA has already adopted it, BGMEA is on the verge of doing so, but I would prefer a unified system of RBH which would be regionally applied, because what happens is organizations are there industry facing, but there needs to be something which is regionally concentrating on the pros and cons and the grievance system, and probably a more uniformed local help desk or regional help desk with regards to every RBH. So then all the suppliers can get the information that they require from the regional offices. So there is a uniformity maintained all throughout. And as we all say, that the transparency would be maintained as well. Thank you, Ike. That should be from my side.
Thank you, Ms. Sharing. So we hear from your sharing is the duplication of mechanisms, that the need for the harmonization and unification. And we also hear, I think, not only you, but also previous presenters saying about the whole hand together between the suppliers and the buyers in addressing this. We will leave that for the Q&A sessions later. And now I'd like to invite Sarah. I have a question for you. That it seems that the Responsible Business Help Desk in Cambodia was launched, I think, the first among the 4 local help desks. So over the past few months, could you share with us which type of questions that often come from the member companies regarding HREDD so far?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, very well.
Okay, so as you said, but first of all, hello everyone. So I'm very happy to have you all together another time, and also because, as Ike said before, it's a really an RBH network today. First, as said, so the RBH in Cambodia, the Responsible Business Hub, has been launched at the end of November, and we have around 2 months of period to be considered. During these 2 months, we probably received 20 inquiries from different kind of entities, like companies, like NGOs, like individual consultants or consultancy companies. And let's say that the questions and inquiries that we received can be easily divided into 2 main categories. So we have a first group of generic questions, mainly interested in understanding, so what is the Responsible Business Hub and what kind of services we will offer to factories, and what is the rationale so behind the creation of the Responsible Business Hub. Other questions always, I mean, on a generic level, they regard general update about legislative initiatives that are coming up globally at international level. On the other hand, we have more specific questions, which can easily presume a first level of knowledge about sustainability standards. For example, more technical questions like what kind of risk factors are specifically covered by the new German Supply Chain Act? Or, for example, can existing compliance due diligence system mechanism be considered in light of the new requirements mentioned by the German law? And so these kind of specific questions already reflect some of the challenges that we are facing here in Cambodia. And let's say that many of them are very, very similar to those mentioned by our colleague in Bangladesh. Let's say the big concern about duplication of efforts, or questions that make you understand the level of knowledge that maybe there's a big interest in knowing more and more details about what kind of duties and specific obligations are, I mean, are in place for manufacturers, but also for the brands, and what is their relationship. So let's say that generally there's a huge interest in understanding more about the ongoing scenario. I mean, so from a legal point of view, and especially from a practical point of view. So what's going on?
Thank you for sharing. So I think that also the other local knowledge, for instance, in Vietnam, we can also vision what is coming up from the requirements from the suppliers in the near future for that. And last but not least, I would like to hear from Ms. Lan Anh that. So hearing all of this conversation, how would you see the Responsible Business Hub that benefits producer, workers, and brands in Vietnam, in the country? Could you share with us some information about that? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chang, for the questions. Actually, today I'm very happy to meet you all here, our colleagues from running the RBH in different countries, and this is very good opportunity for me to learn from you, and also and we can have an opportunity to share the experience on how we run the RBH more effectively in each country. Actually, VCCI, Vietnam Chamber of Commerce and Industry, we are the largest NGOs in Vietnam, and we serve the big community of business in Vietnam. We have more than 200,000 of members, and so having such a RBH, responsible business habits in my country is quite relevant at this stage, because you know that Vietnam has signed and implement many FTAs. So, and we can and have to support the producers, and also to take this opportunity to of the benefits of the FTAs in Vietnam. And this also benefit for the VCCI, as we can extend our networking of local and international actors, and also we can have a network of new and can develop the new members to the VCCI to strengthen the visibility of our country, of our organizations in our country. So regarding your questions on how will the responsible business habits can benefit the producers and workers and brand in my country, I may say that for the producers, we can see that being provided, they can be provided informations and training to raise awareness on due diligence, which is quite new for us. I heard about this terminology for like a few years ago in Geneva from the ILO conference, but now it's widely introduced in Vietnam and other countries. And we can also have a contact point to ask supports and advice on due diligence process, and a connection with a verified pools of local and experts consultants on due diligence with other initiatives. It means that we can have hold the system to support, to provide the services to our producers in my country. And also for the workers, I think that they also because the producer understand and apply the due diligence the worker in their factories can receive the better welfare and income thanks to better performance of their employers on due diligence and sustainability. Yeah, that's some few points of mine on your question. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lanang, for that. I think we have only 2 minutes left. And with this, I would like to ask my colleague Christine to take some questions from the floor, and then we can have some Q&A in next. Christine, can you please?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for all your questions. Some of them have been already addressed and written, but some of them have not. So I would like to share them with the panel. So there is a question from Margot. What about the role of the workers themselves, trade unions, in the process of due diligence? Shouldn't they have a role in the process as well, instead of only producers and brands? I would direct that question to either of the RBH, and then in addition, Eike can also say a few words. So is there someone, BGMEA, BKMEA, VCCI, EuroCham, do you want to address this question? The role of unions.
If I may address that, is it possible to actually rephrase, state the question again for me? I just heard the internet line wasn't as good, so I just had a little bit of it.
So the question is, what is the role of unions and workers themselves in the process of due diligence?
Okay, thank you so much. From our organization representing BGMEA, I would like to add a few pointers over here. If you may know, we are just, we refer to our workers as our assets. The reason being, this industry, no matter what, actually runs around and around because of them. It's about the women empowerment. That is our main motto, and how we create livelihoods over here. So as per that, it was a very important requirement from the international organizations and the levels as well, and our workers, for which we have multiple registered trade unions in our country, which are run as per international laws as well as incorporating the national laws of trade unions under the RMT sector as well. With regards to that, we also have grievances sector under this whole trade union thing. And you would be happy to know that BGMEA over the past 2 years in this existing board that we are working, we had 40 grievances, of which 29 are already being dealt with, 10 are already solved. And under these trade unions, there is a tripartite agreement made so as all these parties can have their say with regards to these points of due diligence as well. And so that there are no violations of human rights per se. And all of those are addressed according to the consent of all parties, the manufacturers, as in the factories themselves, the workers, and the trade union representatives, the independent third parties as well. So that's
okay.
how we're dealing with things. I don't know if I've actually
Sorry, I
addressed,
have to cut you off. I'm sorry, because we are running out of time. But I know, Eike, you want to say a few words about the unions?
Well, maybe just to complement, of course, we are fully aligned with Margot, what's Margot writing, that unions are and take an important role in the entire due diligence process, and that they are, of course, also foreseen as important stakeholders in the UNGPs and the OECD guidance that describe the process of due diligence. And also as part of the Initiative for Global Solidarity, we have a variety of projects where we work also with unions and building also here capacity for due diligence, because also that, of course, needs to be understood with the stakeholder group and also with civil society. So today was just the focus on the RBHs, but I think there would be the opportunity to host a similar session also on their role.
Okay, then we have another question. Do the hubs include space to discuss, address violations tied to purchasing practices? That means excessive overtime, verbal abuse, etc. This question goes directly to, yes, Mr. Isan.
Sorry. Actually, this is a very nice question, and actually, this should be here, but there is no option in our hub, responsible business hub, to address the purchasing practice of the buyers. Actually, you know, there is a full supply chain. It's not only the manufacturing part. So there is a part from the order placing to manufacturing part, but here actually we talk about the laws which is cover only the, of course, the manufacturing part, but not the purchasing part. So the purchasing practice is the whole full practice part. Hopefully you understand, right? The purchasing practice doesn't means only the manufacturing part of the goods. So there is, I think, still there is some lacking about this point. But over the time, as a new initiative, I think over the time we can include all these points.
Okay, great. Yeah, then there was a discussion about what is the role of the brand. So has anyone a closing remark on that question? What is the role of the brands? And then there is a particular question to Barrister. I come as a last question. So any input from your side to what is the role of the brands? Shouldn't they be in the driver's seat? Okay, maybe Barrister, it's a specific question to you. What do you have in mind for brands to be more lenient towards manufacturers? What might a compromising attitude look like, considering that the laws apply to all manufacturers?
Thank you so much. Very specifically, two things that I wish to say. We are actually growing, and you know, the world system and the whole financial base, or the dollar rates and the inflation, the order numbers, everything is constrained at the moment. So all we want is support from our stakeholders as well, our brands and suppliers. Hence, I would expect that the RBH being a really new introduction, we could go a little slow. The reason being, we would want some comprehensive set of uniform laws and regulations under the regime, and we would want them to give us time to apply them, and there can be scalable laws or scalable regimes, and different levels of factories would apply them chronologically over the years, so that we are given some time to adapt it while still being very favorable and welcoming to those laws or regimes or the business models, whatever they name it as. That's all my proposition is. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I think we have addressed all questions, or the others were answered in writing. So I just realized that Chang has internet connection, so I have the honor to close the session. I'm sorry for overshooting 3 minutes, but my big thank to all the presenters, to Eike and Janosch as an input giver, and especially our RBHs from Bangladesh, Vietnam and Cambodia for your valuable insights and your participation in this event. And for all the audience, if you want to get in touch with the RBHs or the GIZ, so the different RBH can share the email address in the chat so that you all have it. We already have the email address from EuroCham, and we have the email address from VCCI. So BGMEA and BKMEA, please feel free to also share your contact details for the RBH in case someone wants to directly contact you.
For having us.
Okay, thank you so much for all your input, and yeah, see you in any other sessions as well at the OECD event. So thank you so much and have a good day. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye
Thanks,
bye.
everyone. Bye bye.